You are welcome to HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. Sony Records is a very big corporation that invested billions of dollars in putting in place the necessary infrastructure to manage the production and distribution of music in the United States. Sony has over the years expanded to other parts of the world. The corporation did go shopping for many smaller record labels back in the 90s, and inherited all the deals with artists who were already registered with such companies. Back in 1995, for example, Sony ATV Music Publishing was established when Sony decided to get into a joint venture with Michael Jackson. The joint venture quickly acquired EMI Publishing, and today owns over 3 million copyrights. Just like Sony did with Michael Jackson, they did with many other record companies. Sony bought Jive Records, a company that had been created back in the 80s, and was largely successful with hip-hop and R&B artists, along with managing various dance shows in the Midwest. However, they did not do this directly. Jive was first acquired by Bertelsmann Music Group, commonly known as BMG, in 2002, and BMG was later bought by Sony in 2008. Jive Records thereupon remained a unit owned by Sony, until later in 2011 when it dissolved and was completely absorbed by RCA Records. This is how great artists such as R. Kelly, who were working under Jive Records, were completely absorbed into Sony. It is however important to note that Sony's dealings with great artists have never gone without lawsuits. Sony and Michael Jackson, for example, at one point had to settle their endless lawsuit out of court, when Michael decided to sue Sony for releasing posthumous album featuring songs sung by an impersonator. It is at this moment that Michael Jackson's wars with Sony started. Sadly, when an artist picks up a fight with Sony, it almost 90% of the times end in either death or life in prison. Too bad for Michael, it ended in death. Sony seems to value its money-making engine more than the parts that make up the engine. The greedy and selfish corporation would rather do away with a few valves, than risk losing the entire system that makes them billions of dollars every year. It's not difficult to notice the pattern of events that follow when a great artist picks a fight with Sony. That's usually when the series of endless lawsuits begin, and a swamp of accusations that are well marketed to the whole world to hear and judge you get started. In other words, you cannot question Sony and get away with it. And when Sony starts a job on you, your life will technically be under threat. It's either they send you to life in prison, or you receive an informal death sentence. What's happening to R. Kelly is not so different from Michael Jackson's experience. The moment he opened his eyes to the money that Sony was not remitting to his bank accounts, and threatened to sue for billions of dollars, is when his troubles begun. And not so many people are brave enough to discuss this matter. It's more like going against a monster company and expecting to win the fight. However, among the people who had come to support R. Kelly on the day he was convicted at Brooklyn Federal Court was his godson by the name D'Angelo, who among many was brave enough to speak about this sensitive truth and put Sony Records on the weighing scale. Take a look.
And Sony knew what they was going to do, and Sony wanted to push the narrative out to the media, to the world, about him doing this so that they can keep his $1 billion.
All R. Kelly did wrong was start asking for his money, and then the big fat corporations started their usual work of defamation, just like they did to Michael Jackson, killing his public image. When they failed with Michael, they went about other methods. In fact, R. Kelly is likely safer in prison at the moment. When he gets out, he needs to be careful what he eats and drinks. He needs to hire a new personal doctor and stay away from major music awards ceremonies that Sony has a hand in. While we may know who executed the lethal dose, we will never know who was behind the death of Michael Jackson. At least not in this lifetime. It's just very difficult to go against a narrative that has been sold with billions of dollars. I personally do not believe that the so-called women's group in New York City hired the Cessna that flew over Sony offices, carrying with it a banner with the infamous words "Mute R. Kelly." I mean, who has money to waste? Sony only wanted to justify their dropping of the partnership they had with Robert and chattered the plane in that regard. All the so-called women's group needed to do was make the payment. Where the money came from, they do not have to disclose. As for Michael Jackson, Sony later silenced his family when it bought out Michael's shares in the Sony ATV partnership, and remitted slightly over $500 million to his children. This was definitely a better bargain for Sony after Michael's death. It may look a lot of money to the children and their mother, but surely, I am certain the value of Michael Jackson's shares were probably 10 times the remitted amount. What hurts the most, however, is the way Sony will do whatever they want to an artist and get away with it. Sony doesn't really care about fans and will take them for a ride when they choose to, and take away their favorite artists only to satisfy their financial needs. Considering it's the fan base that powers Sony's success, perhaps we should consider muting Sony instead, for there are alternative corporations doing an even better job. Otherwise we have a big problem. According to Ashley Davis, it is this truth of the matter that saw R. Kelly get emotional during his interview with Gayle King. I don't understand how people could not hear the pain and frustration in his voice. When he got emotional, I felt his pain. R. Kelly was cheated of all his money by those he worked for, and extorted by the people he loved. And you will notice that these people are merely being used against him by a much bigger power. Rashonda texted Robert and told him, "Don't let the devil win." Meaning there is a bigger force driving her to make the allegations. Interestingly, she turned out to be an agent of that what she talked about. If you wish to take part in a live interview on this channel discussing any of these topics, let us know by emailing us on sashahnnewsroom@gmail.com for scheduling. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.